Hello everyone, thanks for tuning to today's third video. Well, I know I said a few minutes ago that we was going to be signing off on videos for today, but I thought while I've got a spare hour or so, I would get the December forecast together because I'm a bit late with that. I've got 3 videos to do tomorrow as well, so I think we'll get this one out of the way. We're going to have a review on November's forecast. I think it went reasonably well. Then we'll have a look at what the CFS and Beijing Climate Centre models are forecasting for December. And then I'll give you out this December forecast, and then at the end we'll have a quick sneak peek at January. Just say the 2 videos released today. We have the ECWF 30-day look ahead, which of course also covering the period of December, and the regular week 10-day video update. There could be some cold and wintry weather on the way for next week. Have a look at that, see what's going on there. Right, so have the stats in for November at the UK Met Office. So for temperature, November came out below average. It was a colder than average month, set against 81 to 2010. You can see that widely across the UK, pretty much all areas below average. England, Wales, Northern Ireland, around sort of half a degree to 1 degree below the 81 to 2010 average. Scotland was even colder than that, going down to around a couple of degrees below average. So a significantly colder than average month for Scotland. Precipitation-wise, so again, very similar to what we've seen throughout the autumn, with a big northwest to southeast divergence. So for western parts of Scotland, for example, we were significantly drier than average during November, with some parts of western Scotland having less than 20% of their average rainfall. Further south, though, pretty much of central England, much of eastern England, parts of eastern Scotland too, including that, it was a significantly wetter than average November, particularly in a specific area from the Midlands going up towards Lincolnshire and Yorkshire, where we had those tremendous floods, some places having 200% of their average rainfall during November. Now, the Galsworthy's November forecast was for a slightly colder than average November. We said temperatures were likely to come in around half a degree below average. It's actually a little bit colder than that, especially in the north, but at least we got the direction of travel right, which was very colder than average month. We also said a wetter than average month. Yes, that came true for England, Wales and eastern Scotland, not for western Scotland. That sort of strange northwest-southeast divergence is typical of this autumn. I haven't got the full autumn stats in yet, but it is typical of the autumn, where we saw drier conditions in the northwest, wetter conditions in the east and southeast, indicative of a rather southerly tracking and sort of wavy jet stream, I think, taking the low pressures down to the southern part of the country rather than going on their normal track, which is southwest to northeast, and that would normally deliver the wettest weather to the northwestern part of the country. So, an interesting November from a temperature and precipitation anomaly perspective, and I think the Galsworthy.com November forecast panned out quite well. I'm very pleased with the November forecast this time. Right, so on to December. This is how the 700 millibar height anomaly is looking from CFSV2 for December, and it's going for a very Atlantic-driven month. Lots of low pressure in the Atlantic with these blue colours just here. We have high pressure out in the middle of the central North Atlantic. Jet stream is on its way through like that, so it looks like with an Atlantic onslaught type month, very unsettled, bouts of heavy rain, possibly gale force winds at times, and just a real battering from off the Atlantic Ocean. Not an overly mild month, though, given it's a very Atlantic-driven pattern, so the temperature anomaly for the UK and most of Western Europe, actually, is only coming out close to average. It is a milder than average month across the northern parts of Europe and also on the eastern side of Europe as well, but out in this western part of Europe, particularly for the UK and Ireland, sort of average temperatures at best. So it's an especially mild month, which is a bit of a surprise given it is going for a very Atlantic-driven, westerly type month. Obviously, a wetter than average month expected, given this Atlantic onslaught type pattern that the model is going for. So, significantly above average rainfall being forecast by the CFSV2 for December, not just for the UK, but through most of northern and western Europe as well. A very wet month with average temperatures and regular bouts of wet weather sweeping in from off the Atlantic Ocean. This Alba Beijing Climate Centre is looking in comparison. This is a 500 millibar height anomaly from the Beijing Climate Centre for December. So, still Atlantic driven. It's got lower pressure, below average heights, sort of to the north and west. It does have more influence from high pressure down to the south or southwest, though. So, it's still Atlantic driven. It's still bringing in the jet stream like that. But it is pulling up milder air there from the south, and probably not as much of an onslaught as CFS is going for. Probably not as unsettled, probably not as wet and windy as CFS is showing. It's a little bit above average with the temperature anomaly for December with Beijing Climate Centre, a milder than average month being forecast there for the UK. Only a little bit above, but definitely slightly milder than we saw with CFS, and that's because it's bringing the air up more from the southwest, I would have thought. And the precipitation anomaly not as wet, so it's close to average really with the precipitation anomaly. A little bit wetter than average for northern western parts of the country perhaps, but I think most places are kind of like average precipitation to perhaps a little bit on the drier side, especially so down in the south. So, they're in agreement for a broad pattern which is Atlantic driven during December. Obviously, the CFS is a lot more unsettled than the Beijing Climate Centre. The CFS really is throwing the Atlantic at us. And if it came off, we would get copious amounts of rain and lots of gale force winds at times as well. Interesting that the temperature anomaly isn't overly mild, though. As far as Beijing Climate Centre is concerned, it is still Atlantic driven, so there would still be bands of rain coming in from the Atlantic, but it is not as wet and windy. And it's a little bit milder as well, as the wind is sort of pushing up more from the southwest as opposed to the CFS, which is sort of northwesterly. Now, I think the broad idea of an Atlantic-driven month is probably correct. I think we will have low pressure driving in off the Atlantic at regular intervals this month. But I tend to think it'll probably be a little bit colder than these models are showing, actually. So the first thing I'd say is that I'd expect at least a couple of cold snaps during this December, in line with the Galsworthy's winter forecast, actually, which was for December to be alternating cold and milder interludes type month. So I mean, we're seeing with model output that next week could get quite cold for a while, and we may have another bout of that later in the month, possibly coinciding it with Christmas and New Year. We'll have to see about that, but I definitely think December does have a little bit of colder potential than these two models are showing, so I would expect the temperature normally probably to be quite close to average, maybe even ever so slightly below. So let's say again around half a degree below average to sort of 81 to 2010 averages. So not a particularly mild month, and maybe even a little bit on the colder side, if anything. Precipitation-wise, I think probably above average with rainfall, especially so in the first half. It may go drier in the second half. If it does, I suspect there may be some colder weather involved in that as well. So perhaps a little bit drier, colder later in the month. But I think overall, another wetter than average month is likely. That's what we said in the winter forecast. The winter starts off very unsettled and probably trends drier as it goes along. So I think for this month of December, still regular bouts of rain. And as it's a colder month overall, a colder pattern with the jet stream lining up northwest to southeast quite often, I think not only rain, but also the chance of snow, particularly for northern parts of the country. Northern Britain could get some snow this month. But even down in the south, we wouldn't totally rule out chance of some wintry conditions at times. So, average to maybe a little bit below average in terms of 81 to 2010 averages, and above average rainfall. That's what we're forecasting for December. And that will continue. The risk of flooding, of course, as well, unfortunately. I think we still have a risk of flooding during December, and then hopefully that begins to fade and go away later on in the winter. Finally, just have a quick sneak peek at January, and no changes. This is what the CFS is forecasting the January, if it's right, the Atlantic onslaught goes on. Look at all that low pressure to the north and the west, bringing in a jet stream again. So very little change, just looks very, very unsettled once more. In January, we'll worry about that when we get to it, shall we? Let's sum up December. So, yes, I think we're in for another unsettled month. I think it will be quite cold at times, especially in the north. A couple of cold snaps are likely. Probably the risk of snow, therefore, at times in the north. A lot of cold rain, potentially, down in the south. But even there might be a little bit of wintry weather coming and going. And just a very active month, really, especially the first half. I think the second half might go a little bit drier. If it does, it may go a bit colder as well. That might coincide around Christmas to New Year, maybe a rather drier, colder sort of end to the month. But the risk of flooding probably continues for this month. Right, so that's it, and we'll just see how it goes. The November forecast panned out quite well, but that doesn't mean anything for December. It could all go horribly, horribly wrong. As always, any forecast beyond 5 to 7 days is with a big pinch of salt. And it comes with health warnings, and it's just for fun, really. Right, so that's it. That is the video for today. That's I'm not going to be doing any more today. Tomorrow we'll have a 5-day forecast. We'll have a week to 10-day video update, and I think got a Christmas update penciled in tomorrow as well. So come back for all of that. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.